If you want to know how to install a backup camera in a Volvo XC90, this is the video for you. This backup camera works with the head unit upgrade I did recently. And I'll also be showing you how to fix a stuck trunk handle that is a common issue for these cars. This is my current latch or handle, and you see it just stays up in the top up position. So if I actually want the latch, I have to push it back down. So I'm going to be replacing that. I can actually see it's rusty in there. So let's get started on removing the trunk liner, because we will also be running the backup camera up along from the front door. Probably tuck it in here, and then I'll try to get it through, get the cabling through this here, and then it'll run down inside and onto the new handle. To remove the paneling on the trunk, we've got to remove this light, which is going to be just popping it off gently in the corner. We'll disconnect. There's a connector here. Once that's off, put it aside. You would just pry it off. There's a little notch right here you can get in with a plastic trim tool. Put that somewhere safe. The connector is just a little regular connector you push in on the top. Slide it out. To remove the handle trim, we're going to use a small screwdriver. I'm going to push in just two little indents right here. I'm going to push the screwdriver in, and that should allow me to wiggle this out. There we go, that's this off. Now on either side here, there is a screw there, and on this side, bottom left corner. T25s. The long one goes with the handle. This one's a little bit shorter. We'll store it with the bulb lens. So the trim is held in with plastic clips or pins that we want to carefully hold in. So be gentle because you don't want to damage them. Okay, so let's see. We have two on the end over there, two over here, two on the bottom, and two on the top, or whichever way. So our handle is behind this panel here. We have a little opening to get to the outer bolt or nut. Same thing on this side, and then the other two are in the middle, and they're behind the wiper motor mechanism. So one is right back here, and the other one is behind this. So not really accessible, but we're gonna be able to do it. There's a cable right here with the barrel connector that connects to the inside of the handle, which when we pull, activates the latch, just right here. So we're gonna have to remove this so we can access it all. Okay, so you can pull the handle from the outside if you're sitting on the tailgate, and that'll give a little slack here. We're gonna try to push out this barrel connector, so just thinking I could do that. Yeah, okay, so you push the edges of the yellow connector off, you can slide that back. So once we have the clip back here, we're gonna push it up. The screwdriver, slide it out, upwards. So that now it's out of the thing. I'm going to reach behind the try to, there you pull it up, okay, and then it just came out. So now we have our cable released. We'll have to reconnect it later on. Here I'm removing the 3 bolts that hold the wiper motor. Okay, you just slide, you can move it up out of the way. It's still connected to the wiper on the outside, but this will allow us to get a little more access, which means I can use my 10mm wrench here. Undo these guys. So right here, with the 3 bolts out and 8mm bolts out, we can access those 2. So just like push it slightly out of the way. We have this out, which we started doing, releasing the catch, sliding it back, and then popping it up. And now what we have to do is remove the 2 10mm nuts in here and here. Made in France, just like me. And with the nuts removed, the handle assembly should just slide out. Now, since I'll be running the backup camera cable through here, I'm going to remove this top panel, which is 4 clips. And the side panel, which is 3. For the top panel at the back of the headliner, there's 2 covers, which cover 2 T25 screws. So you can pry the covers off with a small screwdriver. You can see the 2 little tabs that hold them in. T25. This panel has 4 clips towards the rear of the car, and then the front is held on with hooks. And then there's also a connector that you can remove that powers the lights. Thank you. Okay, so now this means we have access once we run the camera cable up. We can tuck it in back here, pop it out through here. Then we're going to run up alongside this harness. We're going to try to fish it through here, back up out of here, and along this. Tuck it back there if we can, and then in to here, where we can connect it to our backup camera. So once you've removed your trunk handle, we can work on it to plan the installation of our backup camera and fix the lever. So this isn't the one that came off my car, but on my car, when I open the trunk, the handle stays in the up position. It doesn't return automatically. And so if I want to be able to actually shut the trunk, I have to first push it back down, back into place. That way it'll work. And actually, the reason that happens, or part of the reason that happens, is that the shaft right here that it pivots on gets rusty and binds up. And you can actually see it a little bit if you look in through here. You can actually see the shaft is a little rusty. So this one, while it works right now, does return. It could be better. I had this cut. This is a 5-inch round bar, and the spec is stainless steel round bar, 0.156 inches, which should be just about right. On either side you can see the shaft, and on this side it's a little smaller. So what I'm gonna do is I've matched up a punch from my punch set, and this seems to be a good size to push the bar out, but not, it'll fit inside too. So I'm gonna do this by lining this up here, and I have a small hammer. I'm gonna try to tap it out. So you're gonna wanna do this off the car. Okay, so you can pull this towards you a little bit, and then we can pull this down. That way it'll be out of the way. And gives me a little more space to tap the. Okay, so I'm having some trouble knocking this out. It's not really moving. It moves a little bit, then it jams, probably because there's rust buildup on the one side. But I have another spare right here, which I will also be trying on. So we're gonna see if this one comes out more easily. Again, same thing. There's one side where it's a little bigger, one side where it's a little smaller. I'm gonna assume probably push it back out this way. Here, the direction doesn't actually matter. I've been holding the pin here and it's starting to come out on this one. It's a little better. I think it rusted a little differently. So I was holding it vertically between my legs. I was tapping on it, so otherwise I was afraid it would move, but now that we are good, I'm gonna try, okay, pop this back. This way. Okay, be aware that once it clears this, your handle might come loose. So you're gonna have to hold it in place if you want to keep hammering on the rod. But I got some pliers, some needle nose, and we'll move this back to place. And vampire tools. They've got little serrated parts here, so what I'm gonna try to do is just grab, twist, and pull. Yeah, that was working. Very good. The rusty bits are gonna be harder to pull out, but to make this easier, you could add some penetrating oil too. As you can see, it's pretty rusty. You can actually see right here, it's like indented, surface rust. And actually, this one that I tried first is way worse. It's getting stuck on the side because the handle, which you can kind of see here, there's a main covered part, and the like rust on the other unit has just thickened the rod here, which means it's practically impossible to do anything. I'd have to hammer it harder, and might do it a little later. And as you'll see in a little bit, I was able to do it. I am going to go trying to cut this to size. So I'm gonna try to match right here, because this still has to fit through the opening in the car. So if it's too long, it'll block. So I'm just gonna go cut that down. So I've cut my replacement bar to size. Just a tiny bit longer, but it should be just fine. And I'm going to feed it back in on this side. Same side it came out of, the old one. The reason it's going to be a little offset here is there's a spring on this side, and we want to keep it in place. It fits in now, it's just a matter of lining it up so it fits in through the handle. Okay, got it through the first one. That should help keep things lined up, and then twist. Maybe you can see here. You can see it coming through. Just want to make sure it stays kind of lined up, and then into the last part and back out. There we go, right here. Right here. Perfect. Look at that. Whenever it turns. Real springy. That's nice and shiny. Nice stainless. See our ends both here and here. And yeah, look at that. Perfect. Since we have our handle right here, and we're going to be installing a backup camera, we're going to start thinking about where we're going to mount this. So this is the backup camera I'm using. I will not be using the adhesive that's on here because it's not really that durable. I have it in one of my other cars, and I had to clean it off and use 3M VHP for it to actually hold. But usually I'll just drill it on. But so you can decide whether you want it on the left or the right side of the handle. So the reason I'm gonna probably be looking at mounting it here or here, because on the outside edges there's actually a stud to mount it back to the trunk. So these areas are clear. If you look on this version, there's actually wires, so you're gonna have to be careful of that if you decide to go there on both sides. So let's see. If we line this up, we want it. All right, always be sure to double check before you put it in. Now, when we reach to open the trunk, pulling towards us, we want to make sure that that's this way. This camera will be facing towards us. So if we look here, there is, in fact, space between the two, between the edges on this surface. So we'll be able to use screws to screw this on. Now we'll have to decide how far forward or back. Probably want it a little further back, just to, keep it out of the way, so it won't, if you walk by, you're not gonna like yank it off. If you walk too close to the car or someone else, other people don't care about your car as much as you do. So we have to consider the width. If we look over here, there's a little bit of a raised part right there. So we'll have to see if maybe it'll clear that or not. It should be fine. And then we also have to consider somewhere for this to go through, so the connector. On this camera, what's really nice is that this is a very thin connector, so you drill a hole that's just big enough for this, and then you can feed it through, and then use some silicone if you want to seal it up. But in certain situations, you do get cameras that have the male version of this, and you do have to drill a significantly bigger hole to fit it through, or what I've done in the past in another car, actually filed down this a little bit so the hole didn't have to be as big. I do prefer when I can to get a camera that has this type of connector, and you can actually get extensions for this type of camera connector, so it would be thin on both ends if you need to route it in unusual places on other cars. So yeah, this will probably end up being right around here, just inside the overhang from the trunk, and then this will run right here. And same thing could be on the other side. I think it's probably gonna be on this side because I'm right-handed, so I'll tend to grab it this way. I also fixed the second spare I had just so I could pick the best one. Never touch. Let's test it out. Yep, it's pretty tight. Real nice. And the same thing, actually, not quite the same thing. So if you see, this is a slightly older style, I think. And so this actually gives us a little more space. So on the other side, probably about the same thing. I guess I'll just have to see and decide which version I go for, and I'll show you when I do. Drill it on and wire this through. Backup camera is going to go on this side. I'm actually going to drill the spot where the cable is going to come through a little behind this, because where the opening is here, there's going to be room for the screws to go in, but we'll have a better, easier time if we run it through here and out to the side. Because behind this, if we're screwing the camera through here, this spot would end up being right here. We don't want to drill through this. If you're looking for guidance for where the opening stops, this tab here is supposed to clip in to the cutout on the trunk hatch. So anything to this side of it is within that opening. Now, the reason I'm comfortable drilling there is because I know that the opening is set for this bigger housing which came off the car. Now this one, just make sure I'm doing it on the right side. Should fit through. I've peeled off the adhesive. Yep, perfectly. And this is 15/64 if you have that drill, but that's what I happen to have that was the closest. You could also do a 1/4 inch. Now you may notice this fits, but then you have a gap. So what I usually do And this situation is once it's in its final position, put some black gasket maker around it and that seals it up. So yeah, pull this through, go through. And we'll be running this here like this. Just lining it up. I will have to move these two out of the way, just in case. I don't want them getting damaged. These two. Now since there's slots in it, you can have some adjustability. I'm gonna center it for now. And we'll be able to angle it up and down here. So before installing the panel, I had to make sure that the screws that hold the camera in don't interfere. So right here, I had to file this down a tiny bit. It's actually pretty easy because this isn't actually metal, it's like some sort of composite material. So the way I marked that before filing to know to file in the right place was, since I was using anti-seize, I put a little drop on the two screws and it showed up on the paint, so I knew where I could file. I was initially going to drill, but it turns out it was close enough to the edge, so I just filed it. That way you don't have any area on the panel that's going to cause any like bump, because there's a seal on the edge, and this is important because if you live in a place where winters go below freezing, if water gets in and it freezes, it'll expand and you could crack the panel and damage stuff. Last thing to do before reinstalling this is to put some silicone to seal that up. So, gasket maker. I use black. It's not visible. You can also use clear. Just grab a little blob of it. Put it in from the back. A little bit. And a little bit from the front. So first thing I do is run this up through the opening for the left bulb. So you can run it up, reach for it on the other side, grab it, grab this, and before feeding it through, just get it preliminarily lined up. Now it's easier to do that with the license plate out of the way, because since you have to slide it in essentially straight up, if the plate's in and the plate holder, which looks like this, is in the way, you're not going to have an easy time slotting it in. Now with that done, I'm going to reach in and start these by hand. Okay, I got those started. I'm going to reconnect this. So for the cable connection, you can reach for the outside and actuate the handle so that the place where the cable actually connects will be closer. Reach here. You do want to make sure this is rotated in the way you need it to be. Step through. Snap it in downwards and snap the yellow connector back. No. I did it wrong. Oh god. So what happened is I didn't actually get the cable seated. So. Or I did and then it got unseated. I think that's what happened. Yep. So get the guide part partially slotted in. Connect the barrel, and then slot it in all the way, and snap it in. Okay, now let's tighten up all 4 nuts. You don't want to go too strong because this is not, like I said, this isn't a metal panel. So you don't want to crack anything. And you also don't want to break the stud loose inside the handles panel. That is a nightmare. It's also partially part of the reason why getting spare parts at a junkyard is a good idea, just in case something goes wrong with your original part, or you want to practice on something. You're going to reattach the wiper motor. That's the 3 screws. These are 8mm. The last thing is this connector, which goes right here on the right side from the inside. And this is what powers the plate lights. There we go, that is in. I'm gonna connect my camera cable right here. Let's see, I gotta also figure out where to run backup camera wiring. And that is going to be in the footwell, so I pull the panel off. So what I did to start is pulled it through here because there's a pretty easy access to reach in from up here. So I was able to pull this bundle out. Which means is going to run up inside this seal. So it'll get tucked in here, and then it'll run back to the trunk. I'm going to pull down this panel so I can run this back there and up inside the kick plate. So this should be, looks like it's two T25s. Okay, pop that down. Now we want to run this part behind this inside the dash and just far back enough that it comes up in here. Okay, there's a tab here too, or a clip. Okay. So right here, you want it to come behind that panel, and then you can tuck the cable up behind where the light lives. And in fact, I might zip tie it to the power cable that goes to the light. Yeah, we're just keeping this out of the way in this area. And actually, we'll probably come back in here a little later to install the dash cam. And this is really easily accessible, which is nice. Since this comes out here, I want to make sure it is past where the panel reconnects. Okay, there we go. Snap that in, we need 2 cover, and then our 2 screws go back in there. We're gonna run it up inside this seal. So the idea is to tuck it away so it's not visible, so that, you know, it looks factory. It's nice wiring, while still being relatively accessible if you need to remove it. And a piece of, like a trim tool, you can work it up. And right here, you want to work it behind this panel near the vent. What you could do here, optionally, is to actually remove the grab handle panel. You don't have to, since we're working behind the seal. You can even do it by hand, just run it up, push it in, just feed it. Make sure you untangle your cable. Okay, now here it gets a little different because just very slightly, you just want to work it in here, work it in here. Get your trim tool, just gently push it in. If you have a light cloth or light interior, make sure your hands are clean so you don't get anything dirty. Same thing in the seal up here. And then behind this plastic panel, push it in. And the goal is to run it along and into this panel so they can come out in here. Along the window you want to be careful. So you do want it to be kind of in the headliner, but you also don't want to damage the window or anything. And we're back here, perfect. Now this is in here. We can actually, the goal is to run it up through here. So instead of that, to fit it inside the grommet, if you want to call this, we do have to get creative. So I have a very long wide zip tie and I'm going to try to run through. This should allow, hopefully will allow me to push it up through there and retrieve it in here. So it's going to be tough because this harness and this sheath, this rubber sheath, are about the same size. There's not a ton of room. One option might be to pop off this end of the thing. Yeah, I'll probably do that. That way I can receive it through here and then feed it up to here. So I'm going to feed this up alongside the harness from the top. So the reason I'm feeding it from the top is that once it's through, I could tape the connector I want, wrap it up with tape that's smooth, put a little bit of grease on it to make it slip through, and slide it out. I can feed it out of the top side and then pass it up through here. I have a towel handy. I got some multi-purpose grease, and I'm going to just dip the tip in here. Yep, there we go. First try. There we go. Push that through here. Get that out. Wipe it off. So the first thing I'm going to do is actually wrap the camera side in masking tape because I don't want this to get dirty and greasy. This is not really going to be the easiest fit, but it should work. Grease it up, mostly the front. Pulling it through, trying to. There we go. And once that's through on the top side, gotta wipe off extra grease and then undo the tape. So that's yank pretty hard, but it worked out. So what I'm gonna do is try to feed this through the opening here and reach it inside that opening. So I could just, while I'm at it, pull this through, and now it's accessible there. So I've got a bunch of wiring. Oh no. Yep, there is a knot in here. Damn it. I don't know if I'm recovering that knot. Nope, this knot is staying on the other side. Shit. Oops. And now we have our cable up here, and the last thing is to reseat this grommet here. Now it's sealed up again. And now our camera cable will be protected in this grommet. It doesn't have to be outside, exposed to anything, so that's really good. So now the handle's installed and the wires run from the front of the car. We're gonna wanna connect the camera cable, which is video, power, and ground. So we have our regular video connector, power wire, and a ground wire. So since this trunk material is composite, we can't actually ground the camera to any of the bolts here. So, I mean, there's very few bolts anyway. So there's two options. One, you could run the black wire along where we ran the cable from the front of the car, because on this extension we have the power. So if you pull a black wire through, you could actually ground it up here. So there's a bolt right here where there's a ground from this harness that connects to the chassis. Now, I didn't run that extra wire because I actually didn't think about this ahead, or I didn't find the ground ahead of time. But we have a convenient right here connector that powers the light and the trunk trim. Now both wires are white, but you can actually figure out which one connects to ground using a multimeter. So with the multimeter set to continuity test, I was able to figure out that the wire on the right, which I've marked in blue here, will connect to the chassis ground. And you can also test it against this bolt over here. So to make it possible to connect to the ground here, I'm going to use a T-tap. I'm just going to clamp over the wire. And just in case, I'm going to do it a little further up, because if something does go wrong, I want to be able to have, wire on either side to fix things up. So we're going to line this up, put the wire through in the little V, the little metal groove there. So I'm going to use my Robo Grip. There we go. Now the way this connects is with a spade connector, like a blade that we will crimp onto our ground wire. So what I'm going to do is replace this end piece with that blade. Pretty standard. Use your wire stripping tool, whatever you have. If you ever find that that the wire you have is really thin, and sometimes I'll fold it over itself at the end, like that. So there's a little bit more to grab onto when you crimp this down. So slot that over. Crimping tool. I use this. It's really convenient. Test it. So since our ground is coming there, and our power and video are coming from here, I'm actually going to try to run at least some of this towards where we need to be. So I'm going to separate the power and ground from the camera side, because the ground has to stay on this side. Let's check our side panel. Would there be enough room behind it? Maybe up here? Yep, let's drop it in there. Okay, cool. While that's up there, I'm just gonna pop this back in. There we go. Now we can pull it through if we need more length, and pull it back the other way if we need less. So here I'm connecting the power cable from the camera to the video extension cable that runs to the head unit. Now normally this is used to send power from the head unit to the camera, which I'll get into in just a moment. And we can connect our ground, and that is enough to start testing things. So this, before everything's done, I'm gonna wrap up and kind of tuck in here, but I'm also gonna wrap it in fabric tape so it doesn't rattle. Keep things quiet. All right, so the way I hope this will work is that the radio already receives a signal from the gearbox that when the car is in reverse, and it changes the screen to show the camera feed. So since the camera wasn't connected while I was testing that, nothing showed up. But now that I have the camera connected, we also have to make sure it's powered. And there's, on the connector behind the radio, there's the video connector, and then there's two wires. So I'm gonna figure out which one of those works to power the camera, so that when you put the car into reverse, the radio knows it's in reverse from the CAN bus, and then automatically sends power to one of those wires. So it'll turn the camera on as needed. Now if you're doing a different type of radio that doesn't communicate with the car like that, you would normally run this red wire to the reverse light, and if you tap into that, the power to the camera turns on when you put the car in reverse because the light turns on, and that will work for more traditional double-bin radios. So unfortunately, the initial approach I'd hoped for, which was to power the backup camera from the radio, isn't possible because the two other wires that come off the little harness that goes to the video cable connector don't actually provide any power. So it's a disappointment, but that's okay. We're gonna address this. We're gonna access the battery compartment area. We're gonna remove this panel. So to do that, lift this up, disconnect these by sliding them forwards and up. We're gonna raise this all as one piece. I believe we pull this up. It's a foam block. And then pop this in. Ooh, careful. Right here is a long X-shaped guy right there. Okay, we're gonna undo, and that should allow us to release lens. It's a really long nut, I guess. There's another one in this corner up here, right there. And that should allow us to remove the housing. So this is the back of the tail light housing, and the reverse bulb has 3 wires going to it. It's got black, blue, and black. So I actually ended up just unsheathing this tiny bit to test with the voltmeter when the car was put to reverse, and this is carrying 12 volts when the car is in reverse. So taped it back up, protect it, and the reason I did that is because inside here there's a little harness. This harness right here actually has all those wires. So I'm going to tap in there so I don't have to worry about running the cable through the harness or the grommet, which is sealed up. Now same thing, I'm going to do the T-tap method. Okay, back here right behind the seatbelt there's a connector. And this is the one that has the wires that run into the tail light. We're looking for the blue wire here, which is what we want to tap into without going out of the car. So after testing this connector, the blue wires in here both of these blue wires correspond to backup signal, and because they both connect to a single blue wire here. Here I'm reconnecting the connector and putting it back in its original place. Now right here, I'm gonna tap into this blue wire. I'm gonna double check the spade connector in and test that to ground. The car in reverse and parking brake engaged, of course. I can put this in here and I get 12 volts. Perfect. Alright, now with that done, I can grab this. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take this wire I have, I'm gonna connect one end here. So I'm gonna strip this, maybe a little more. This in here. Double check that's strong connection. It is. So what I'm gonna do is figure out how long I need this to be. So it's gonna run from in here. I'm gonna run it up inside here. And I'm actually gonna run it through that grommet again. Up here, I have some extra length of wire. So I have a little extra, which is actually pretty fortunate. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna grab a little piece of tape to mark this. And I'm gonna pull this. This is the cable this is the camera cable. And I have that. I wanna make sure I've got at least this length to here. What's this length? So I've got my cut cable. You can also run your whole thing through if you're not sure. And I'm gonna strap it on here with some electrical tape. And I use Super 33 Plus because it's my favorite. Pull this through right here. Now I got that. I can pull my tape markers off. Pull my electrical tape off. Okay. And I have that on through. Right here I can pull this through as needed. And this is far enough to connect up here. So over here I have the original connector to the, which goes to that harness, which we will no longer be needing because that's not how we're connecting our thing. Sadly, this red wire can actually run up in here, so I think. So right here I have my excess length of camera wire. I'm gonna bundle this up to a little loop. So I could just pop it in here for now. Like I said before, I'm gonna fabric tape that, zip it together and fabric tape it. This we have to strip the wire here. And same thing here. One connection. Okay. That means we can test. So let's bring this back up front, see how we did. Now, backup camera should be powered when the reverse light is powered. So this should work. Let's wait for this to boot up. Okay. What do you mean no signal? What? So what happened here is I forgot to connect the power wire to the T-tap I put in on the blue wire. Put this on and we have a backup camera. So we do have a bunch of extra lines on it, so let's check in the settings here. So I cut the white wire on my camera, which is specific to my camera. That removed some grid lines, but I think these are internal to the head unit and I want to make sure I remove that. So let's figure out where that setting is. So we should be able to get more settings. Factory settings. Okay. Here we go. Okay, so in factory settings, and you're in the manual, it says the access code is 1617. Go to back car settings, it's reversing. You want to uncheck the assist line. And then up here, save. This is probably where we could put a new logo for when it boots. So I'll look into that later. Alright, let's see. I'm removing the guidelines because I don't like them. It's not for me. Okay, let's see, moment of truth. Boom. Yes, no grid lines. Perfect, it's a success. Alright. Now that everything's tested up front, I can start tucking stuff away. So I'm actually gonna unplug the power wire for the backup camera. I'm gonna run this, try to run this back here. So the goal here is to have this in here in such a way that, maybe behind this actually, in such a way that I can, I'm actually gonna just tuck it in behind the plastic completely. I can run it down here and then in behind this stuff to pop in through here, and here, and here, and here. And maybe if I could finagle this just right, lift this up. Another here. There we go. Run this down here. Plug it back in. Perfect. Now that's tucked away in here, plug back in, make sure everything is seated up properly. There we go, run that back here. Goes in. Up here, since these are all gonna live in here together, let me give this a little zip tie. Not too tight. Okay, that's tucked in. Actually, since that is tucked in, I'm actually gonna put this back on, like so. 3, 4. There we go. Forgot to reinstall the retainers for the taillights. I'm putting them back in right now. The way they're designed, they'll slot on. The beginning part of the stud is not threaded, so you can get it started. Just tighten up. And there we go. Pop this back in once again. Put the foam down. Foam down here. That's it. Just pop this back down again. We're putting this back on the other side to secure it. Drop that down again. Now up here, we can start cleaning this up. So we've got all this stuff we need to kind of just bundle up properly. So to secure the bundle of wires, I actually used some tape to fix it to the panel. So this stays out of the way of the clips. I'm just going to zip tie this. That should work. In or back here. On the other side, we are doing the same thing. We're putting our screw in first. Snap this in, starting with the teeth that go on the bottom. And there we go. It's back on. So now I'm going to reinstall this panel here. So if you remember, this has the hooks on the one side, which will slot in. So we're going to start by connecting the connector first. Line it up, slide it forward. Make sure you can look in the edge to see that your pins are lined up. Okay, and we have our 2 screws and caps that we'll be reinstalling on either side. Get the seal over the edge. And that's it for this piece. And that buttons up the whole rear. And as a last step, putting these back in, which is the tabs lengthwise. Same thing over here. That's it. Now I've reinstalled the license plate, and it is pretty close to the camera, so you do have to be aware of that. So it does clear here, so you may want to bring it up forward just a little bit when you install it. But yeah, you can still fit it in. It looks good. So that's the backup camera installed. If you enjoyed this video, leave a like, and if you have any questions, let me know in the comments. If you want to see more car projects, consider subscribing, and if you want to see how the head unit installation is done, be sure to check that video out too. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.